Hi guys, my name is Hannah Robinson, and I am one of the students in this Old Testament class, and obviously. And so for my research project, I chose Jacob. And the reason I chose Jacob is just because I really think that his walk with the Lord is very interesting. From his reputation of being a deceiver to then serving Laban for 20 years to then wrestling with God and wanting God's blessing on his life. And so I just find his story very inspiring, just because I really appreciate the perseverance that he just went through with the Lord. And so that's the reason that I chose Jacob. And I had taught a lesson on him this past Wednesday in our Go Kids department, and I thought, who better to do my project on since I'm already teaching about him, so I might as well just dive deeper. And so that's why I chose him, and obviously it was who, so Jacob. And the first scripture that Jacob is referenced in is scripture is Genesis 25, verse 26. And that verse says, "After this, his brother came out with his hand, grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to him." And I just am like, I read that and I'm like, oh my goodness, how interesting is it that Jacob was grasping Esau's heel when he came out of the womb? I just think it's interesting because I just think of when it says in scripture there's a kingdom divided. I just think that's so interesting. There's so much depth to Jacob and his life and just all that he went through. And so yeah, I just think he's great. And so the three key points that I decided to do my project on, they were all a little bit different, but I'll just go into depth in them. So the first one that I really went into was in Jacob's life, when he deceived his brother Esau into giving him his birthright. And I just think that it shows a lot about who Jacob was at that time of deceiving his brother, because he was like, I want this birthright, I want it, and whatnot. And then, so that was my first point, but it also, what I tied into it was when Jacob, when he stole Esau's blessing, when he tricked his father Isaac into taking the blessing. And I just I think those are two huge things in Jacob's life that I tied into one. So yeah, that was my first point of just Jacob being a deceiver and taking the birthright and the blessing. And my second point is when Jacob, he went to the land of Haran and he served Laban for 20 years. The first 7, he wanted to marry Laban's daughter Rachel, and so he served Laban for 7 years. And so he did that, and then Laban tricked Jacob into marrying Leah, his other daughter. And during that time, Jacob ended up serving another 7 years so that he could marry who he wanted to marry in the first place, which was Rachel. And then he ends up serving Laban another 6 years. And I just think that is so interesting because we see Jacob as the deceiver, as the trickster, and then he goes and the trickster is tricked. And I just think that's so crazy. Because it's kind of like he got a taste of his own medicine. And so now he's seeing what it's like to be deceived, and he's paying for it. He's working for Laban for 20 years, and we look back to my previous point when he stole the birthright and the blessing from Esau. And it's kind of like, well, Jacob, don't you expect this, And so I just thought that was very interesting because I tied the two together a little bit. And my third point was when we see in Genesis 32, when Jacob was wrestling with God all through the night, saying, God, I want your blessing. I want to be blessed by you. And this wrestling, I think it's interesting that it all went on the night before Jacob had met with Esau and when their forgiveness had just begun. And then we see in this story that as Jacob is wrestling with God, that Jacob is struck at the hip, but he continues to pursue and he continues to persevere through the pain, which I'm sure was really hard because that would hurt, but he persevered through the pain and he ended up getting his blessing at the end, and his name was changed from Jacob to Israel. And so that was my third point, but yeah, so that's why I chose Jacob, and that's why I just think his life is very interesting because he goes through many trials, many areas of perseverance, and I just admire that, and I think it's very interesting. So yeah, I did Jacob. That's all. Thanks. Bye.